In today's video, we're taking a look at the possibility of Patrick Kane ending up on the West Coast in LA before the trade deadline expires this year. Plus, is Bo Horvat's time in Vancouver pretty much done? Is it inevitable he be traded? We also have some other trade rumors involving the Florida Panthers, Anaheim Ducks, and the Toronto Maple Leafs. We had a waiver claim today and a few other items from around the league as well, including a signing in Carolina. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and some trade rumors to take a look at here today. Before we jump into today's news, I just want to thank our brand new partner and our new sponsor, Hockey Shot. Hockey Shot is a Canadian business, been around for about 25 years now, a real innovator in the hockey training aid and synthetic ice business. They've become extremely popular amongst not only the minor athletes, but the professional athletes as well. All kinds of terrific hockey training tools, and instead, of course, the leaders in synthetic ice. If you want to make basically a sheet to be able to play on in the summertime or in your basement or anything like that, these guys are the ones to put it together. So if you're in the market at all for synthetic ice or any training tools, I highly recommend you check them out. We will have affiliate links for both Canada and the US customers down in the pinned comment. But first, let's check out a video here from Hockey Shot taking a look at what they offer. So thanks very much for checking that out. I do appreciate it, and welcome and thank you to our new sponsor, Hockey Shot. I hope you'll consider giving their brand a good opportunity here. All kinds of cool stuff that they offer. Now on to the news. We have a waiver claim today and a few more players clearing waivers. The Detroit Red Wings have claimed goaltender Magnus Hellberg from Seattle. Of course, this is a third time now this season already that Hellberg has been claimed. He started the season by signing with Seattle, ended up on waivers, got claimed by Ottawa, was with the Senators for a few weeks due to injuries on their goaltending situation, back on waivers, goes back to Seattle, then he's on waivers a third time, and now he goes to Detroit. I mean, I'm sure he should take it as a compliment, but all these different teams are willing to take him. But at the same time, it's going to be difficult on his personal life, bouncing around from team to team like that so early in the NHL season. But Detroit is actually the team who had signed him last year, and he came over and had a brief appearance with them. Then, of course, ended up signing in Seattle during the offseason. So we'll see what Hellberg can do in Detroit. Certainly adds to their depth. And I don't know if he'll get much action or if he'll end up on waivers again, but he'll be in Detroit for at least a while. The other two players on waivers were Wayne Simmonds in Toronto and Zach Sanford in Nashville. They have both cleared and can be reassigned to their minor league affiliates if the teams wish to do so. Signing in Carolina today, and it's fairly significant in my opinion. They've signed young goaltender Peter Kotchetkov to a 4-year contract at an average annual value of $2 million per season. So certainly that's pretty decent money for the young goalie to be their regular backup. Of course, that kicks in next year. And for him, I mean, that's a good deal. I mean, he came in last year, especially had some playoff time as well due to injuries with the Carolina Hurricanes, and he performed at a pretty high rate. Fair to say with this signing that Freddie Anderson and Antti Raanta will likely not be your tandem in Carolina next season. I would think that there's a good chance at least one of them doesn't return. My money would probably be on Raanta. At this point, Freddie Anderson's been injured, and Kotchetkov has been out playing Raanta and getting more of the playing time, which is probably a big part of what led to this contract extension to kick in. They probably did well to sign him before we ran into a situation where he's going to cost more money if he gets that much more time this year. Hard to say how things will go. There's even a possibility, I wonder if he'll end up being the starter in a year or two's time. If they can have a starting goaltender making $2 million, that's pretty incredible. But I would think that they'll probably stick with Freddie Andersen for a while yet, but we'll see where things go. Definitely going to lead to some interesting moves in the crease in Carolina. Now, as I mentioned as well, we have a variety of players I want to take a look at with some trade talk. Of course, we saw a couple of NHL trades today as well. If you missed it, there is another video dedicated to these trades on the channel from earlier this afternoon, where we had two deals, one sending Ryan Reaves from the New York Rangers to the Minnesota Wild for a 5th-round draft pick. And we also saw the Toronto Maple Leafs acquiring young defenseman from Arizona, Connor Timmins. Of course, both of these players are players that we talked about in the rumor mill just in the past 24 to 48 hours here, mentioning that both were becoming names that were floating in the rumor mill and likely to be dealt sometime in the near future. I didn't expect it to be quite so quick, especially in the case of Reaves. I thought that might be a little later into the year. But the Rangers got an offer they wanted from Minnesota, and they went for it. And, of course, the Leafs bring back another former member of the Sioux Greyhounds. Connection seems to run wild here with Kyle Dubas. I'm not sure how this is going to work out, but obviously they're quite fond of bringing in players that they were familiar with in their days in the OHL. We know that, and that certainly continues here. But as far as the other players that have not been dealt yet, Frank Seravalli, when asked about the Bo Horvat and the possibility of him re-signing, Seravalli says he believes that ship has sailed, and it's pretty much all about a foregone conclusion here that Bo will eventually be traded at some point between now and the NHL trade deadline, and he has him right at the top of his new trade bait board. Now that we're a quarter of the way through the NHL season, he's starting to put these out again, and of course Horvat is right at the top as the most likely player in the NHL to be moved. Of course, he's having a phenomenal season, pending unrestricted free agent, and there's a number of teams out there that are certainly interested. We know that he's been linked to about 4, 5, 6 teams that have at least had some degree of tire kicking and early conversations with the Canucks. I don't think anything has gotten too serious here as of yet. We also heard from Elliotte Friedman saying that he doesn't believe that Jim Rutherford is really in any kind of a need to make a quick decision or move here with this player. That it's quite possible Bo could remain with the Canucks for a while yet, and if he is dealt, it could be later in the season, closer to the deadline. But it does sound like, all indications point to the fact that there's a good chance that Bo likely is done in Vancouver at some point this season. Of course, we talked about it as well with the Florida Panthers needing to clear some space because Anthony Duclair, who's been out all season on LTIR due to an Achilles tendon injury that he suffered in the offseason, is getting closer to being able to return now. And, of course, the former 30-goal scorer would like to get in the lineup. Now, of course, yesterday we heard some reports saying that, it might turn out to be Duclair himself that they trade instead of taking somebody off their roster. But there's other reports today from Frank Seravalli saying that that's a possibility, but he wouldn't completely rule out the chance that they maybe trade Sam Bennett. Now, of course, I also would throw in Patrick Hornqvist into this. Hornqvist only has 1 year left on his deal, making over $5 million. He's certainly playing a whole different role than he did earlier in his career, and to me might be a player that they might be able to part with. In my opinion, Bennett has fit in relatively well with Florida since being acquired from Calgary, has a decent contract, still relatively young. I would be cautious about trading Sam Bennett. To be honest, I might move Duclair before I move Bennett, but that just depends on what the offers are and what the return packages could look like. So we'll see where things go, but do expect some kind of move out of Florida here in the not too distant future. More reports as well indicating that the Toronto Maple Leafs definitely have interest in Anaheim Ducks winger Frankie Vetrano, a potential scoring winger who shoots left, would fit in nicely with their lineup. We know they've made a lot of changes throughout the first quarter of the season between, anywhere from the second, third, and fourth lines, especially trying to find that right mix. Different players in and out of the lineup, some due to injury, but mostly just finding the right lineup that's going to, be able to stay more consistent throughout the season. They tend to have a lot of what they would call like a value type of forwards on cheaper contracts, fighting for those, bottom 6 spots. So we tend to see a bit of a rotation that's quite common the last couple of years with the Leafs. Of course, Vetrano did sign a multi-year deal in Anaheim, so he might be a little trickier to fit into the salary cap. The Leafs would have to move out a type of player that's making a decent amount of money. I don't know if it'd be like a guy like Kerfoot or somebody like that, but it would probably be more of a change. Like, you're going to swap one player out for a different kind of player, money in, money out. It would be challenging for them to take on any other contracts like this or anything comparable. Now, we've talked about a variety of players from Anaheim that could be available as well, including John Klingberg, Kevin Shattenkirk, Adam Henrique. The list goes on, and I think the Anaheim Ducks, like we saw last year at the deadline or leading up to it, were big-time players in selling off a lot of players that have experience in, expiring contracts, and I think we're going to continue to see that trend continue this year. But another name that apparently could be in that mix that might be due for a fresh start might be Max Jones, the former first-round pick. Certainly has never really found his offensive game at the NHL level. Might be best to have an opportunity to try that somewhere else. We saw a guy like Sam Steele, for example, in the offseason be let go, and he's obviously trying to find new life on a different team this year as well. And it might be time for Jones to maybe try that as well. So, a younger forward who can play a power forward type of game. He's a strong guy. Certainly, plays with some grit. Might be intriguing to different teams around the league, especially heading into the Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, Elliotte Friedman, as I mentioned, also wonders if the big trade at the deadline this year might be Patrick Kane heading out west to the Los Angeles Kings. Of course, he has full control, and will have to waive his no-move clause to go to LA should something like that materialize. But, of course, we've seen the Kings have a decent start to the season. We certainly know that they have the assets to pull off a major trade if they want to go down that road. They have all kinds of prospects. Many of them are, pretty intriguing players that should be able to be impact players at some degree, at least in the NHL, over the next number of years. And there's just no way that they can all play in Los Angeles. And they have a good amount of draft capital to boot as well. So certainly it makes a lot of sense if they want to go after a big-time player to really give themselves a push and have a shot at doing some, big damage in the playoffs. Kane could very much make a lot of sense to be a prime target for them. Of course, in the case of the Chicago Blackhawks, they would have to retain half that salary, there's no doubt. And with Kane having no move and calling his shots, I don't expect that the return is going to be anywhere near what some people might think it's going to be. Kind of like the Claude Giroux trade last year to Florida out of Philly. I think that return's a little bit underwhelming. I mean, so far Owen Tippett is doing okay in Philly and looks decent. So, I think he'll be hopefully a player for them for some time, but, not necessarily, a higher level prospect that's really going to bloom into a superstar. I don't expect that, but I guess time will tell. But in the case of Kane, either way, Chicago can certainly use all the assets it can get to accelerate and go through this rebuild here, which, Kyle Davidson's expecting to be 4 or 5 years before they'll be back up, competing for playoffs again. So I would suspect here that they'll be able to get a decent return, even though he's calling his shot. But it depends on how he goes about things. If he tells the Blackhawks, I'll accept the trade to, these 2, 3, 4, 5 teams or whatever, and let them figure it out, it'll be better. They might be able to have a small bidding war. But if he narrows it down like Giroux did last year and says, no, I want to go to this team, then that's going to really hamper the return, because that team's going to know that they have all the leverage, right? So Patrick Kane to the LA Kings is an interesting thought. I suspect we're going to hear more about other teams as well, including the Rangers. That seems to be one that never seems to go away, and other teams as well. But let me know what your thoughts are on the possibility of Patrick Kane being a Los Angeles King for the playoffs this year. Let me know your thoughts on that, as well as all the other news here today. Down in the comments, we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.